Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this week's edition of Book Bites brought to you by Salam Media. I'm your host, Shafinaaz Hassim, and it gives me absolute pleasure to be able to keep our finger on the pulse of both local and international the literary scene. We've had some amazing awards. We have the Time of the Writer Festival coming up in South Africa during this month of March, something that we look greatly forward to. And it's just that this time, as with last year, pandemic has just taken everything online successfully. So we look forward to updates from there. On today's show, I have absolute pleasure in announcing and being able to welcome a world-renowned author who's made huge impact on communities around the world that she's spoken to or spoken at or done workshops for. And so I have none other than Sister Naima B. Robert on the show today to give you a little bit about Sister Naima. She's a trailblazing speaker, a coach, a transformational life coach, and a best-selling author. Many of you will remember her memoir From My Sister's Lips, as well over 25 other books that have been translated into 14 languages. She's a recipient of various literary awards and is a respected author of diverse fiction. Recently, I had the chance to read her new ebook, Be Your Own Hero. And on today's show, particularly, we'll be talking about her very newly launched book, Show Up, a motivational message for Muslim women, an extremely powerful document for our time, and something, for beyond our time. Sister Naima was also the founder of Sisters Magazine, which we're very familiar with in South Africa, and obviously touching the lives of thousands of readers and writers around the world. Sister Naima, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. It's great to be here.
Wa alaikum salam. As I was reading the book in the last 2 days, Show Up, a motivational message for Muslim women, but a motivational message for anyone who picks up this book, because it's written in such a universal, in such an accessible way. And you're so open-hearted in firstly sharing so authentically and so purely from your heart, your own experiences. So this is not sort of parachute writing. This is not sort of, I'm telling you what to do. And that's what I loved about it. You give form to grief, and grief is something that we're all grappling with through the pandemic, but in a broader sense for life. Tell us about this roadmap of grief that you use to inspire this writing and inspire so many who will read it, no doubt.
Jazakallah khairan, sis. That's interesting. It's the first time I've heard that expression, roadmap of grief. And I think the roadmap really is one of navigating loss, because everyone can relate to loss, because we will always, there's no person in this world that has not lost something or someone, right? Whether it's a parent, a spouse, a child, a job, a home, some kind of ability that they had. We've all had that disruption because we've all been tested, and many of us are being tested now, and for sure all of us are going to be tested in the future. So my personal test, the one that was the catalyst for this journey, was the passing away of my husband of 15 years. Some of the listeners may be familiar with the story. I was very open about it on social media. I've written books about it, articles about it, spoken about it openly, but I know that subhanallah, this is the thing, it's the perspective that we take on these tests that makes the difference between whether we rise as a result of the test or fall. So my particular test was losing my husband, and then needing to step into this role of, being the leader of my household, being the single mother, and also running my late husband's company, which was a big company. It was 300 employees, a business I was not familiar with at all. I talk about that a lot in the book. I just did not believe I had the resources to deal with the new responsibilities that had been given to me. And so the roadmap really is about how I navigated that, and the tools and the mindset that allowed me to, inshallah, rise as the hero in spite of that test. to stand up, to show up, and to continue to live my life as the masterpiece that it is, inshallah, and as the hero of my life story. And then how we and can all do that, no matter what we've been through, no matter what we're currently going through, how we can all make that decision to stand up as the hero of our life story, inshallah.
Subhanallah. I mean, I know you described in the beginning your late husband as the wind beneath your wings. And so the reader is immediately profoundly being able to connect in that little way with the profoundness of your loss. Because here's, we often look at, I mean, and you obviously speak to couples as well. Here's a wonderful example of a couple that encouraged and enhanced each other. So that loss and then the navigation that you talk about. What would your advice be to couples? Because in the here and the now, when you're going through the stresses of everyday life, how do we make the most of that relationship in every sense of the word?
I think that's it's a great question and a really important question. And it's one that, it's a reminder to myself first. But if there's anything that I learned from that experience of losing my husband, it was that we as human beings, we tend to take blessings for granted. And that's universal. Like, we tend to do that in general. We will focus on the inconvenience. We will focus on the things that we don't like about something, the things that we're not happy about, the things that we don't have, the things that haven't happened yet. And what that means is that we do not pay attention to and acknowledge the things that we actually do have until it's too late, until you lose that thing, or that thing leaves you, or that thing is taken away. And then now you're left realizing, wow, I didn't even realize what I had. So with couples, I think we can all agree that couples in general kind of do take each other for granted. We allow the small annoyances, the petty differences to cloud everything. And I think there's a poem in the book, certainly it's in my book, 4 Months and 10 Days, but I think it's in the book as well, where I talk about, loving now, making that decision to love now. What you have, everything you have is on loan. Every single thing. Your life, your husband, your parents, your children, your sight, your health, everything is on loan from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if that's the case, my call in the book really is for you to start to acknowledge all the things that you've been blessed with and that you've been, lent, and start to treat them with the respect and appreciation that they deserve, because it is a loan. And if it's taken away, the one who loaned it to you has every right to take it away. And you don't get to sit there and say, well, why? It's not fair. Why about this? And how can I this and how can I that? You don't get to do that, because it's a loan. When somebody gives you a gift or loans you something, you didn't ask for it, mind you. Yeah. It's not like you worked hard and then you got that thing. No, none of us worked hard for our eyes. None of us worked hard for the ability to speak or the ability to study at school. The ability to study at school, something that we're born with. The ability to connect with people, to love people. We're born with that. We didn't earn it somehow. We didn't work to a certain level and then, you got the ability to love someone, right? You're born with that. So that is a blessing from Allah. Allah has gifted you that thing. So now the question is, if somebody gifts you something, okay, and says, use this for as long as, you need to, but I may take it back, right? Would you then not be grateful for that thing that you were given, that you didn't earn, that you didn't work for, you didn't even ask for it per se? It's just yours. That's what our lives are like. Most of the things in our lives, we didn't work for them. We don't deserve them. We didn't even ask for them. We just, mashallah, barakah, right? So when you've got this barakah, if somebody was to give you something, as I said, and said, just use it for as long as, but I may take it back, how would we behave with that thing? We would appreciate it. We would respect it. We would acknowledge the blessing of it. And if it was taken away, we've got the two choices. We can either focus on the fact that, now I no longer have this thing, therefore X, Y, and Z, or we can focus on, wow, I was blessed to have that thing. And some people are not even blessed with that. Whether it's a spouse, a parent, a child, and a skill, a job, a house, the very fact that it's been taken from you is a reminder that you had it in the first place. And a lot of the time we don't really look at things that way. So a lot of what I'm trying to do in the book is help people to shift their paradigm and to really change the way they look at the reality of this life and its tests, because this is the superpower that we as human beings have. It's incredible. I think that, many of us in the world, not just Muslims, but just in general, people feel like things happen to them. And they do, because we don't choose the tests. We didn't get like a multiple choice form and you get to pick which tests you're going to go through in your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses the tests, right? But the amazing thing about human beings is that we have the ability to choose our response to those tests and to decide what we focus on, to train our minds to look at things in a particular way and to take the appropriate action. That's a superpower, because other creation don't get to do that. They behave on instinct. Something happens to them, they have a natural instinctive response. Human beings are not like that. We can be programmed by society and programmed by what we've been taught to respond a particular way, but it's not innate and it can be changed. So a big part of, the empowerment I'm hoping for all the readers of the book is that they realize, I've got some agency here. Yes, it will happen, life will happen, but I have some choices. I have some decisions, and those decisions and those choices can affect the quality of my life and how I go through this life, even if I'm going through tests. So I don't know whether that makes sense.
It's a very positive. No, you've got a very positive way of putting it together, because on the one hand, as human beings, we're creatures of habit. And so when you say like, we'll just receive and happily receive, but we know that there's a very fixed point of time that you have something, maybe just then we'll have more appreciation. Or if you've had to expend some resource, energy, money for something, that's when we put value. So unfortunately, yes, we are very much ego driven in that sense. But if we can quickly jump back to, because I really like your positive spin on, the concept of agency and the ability that we have. Show up, just the title, show up. For me, I read that as something positive, but it's also an admonition. It's a reminder to say, come on, get up and do your thing. Tell us about the title and how this links into your motivation for writing this particular book.
I love that question. Thank you so much. When I told my agent that I wanted to call the book Show Up, she was a bit taken aback and she wasn't sure. She was like, that's a bit confrontational. Do you think your audience will vibe with the book? And I said, look, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. When I say show up, and I want people to understand what showing up means. Showing up means to be aware and mindful and present in your life as it is, and to live it fully as the hero of your life story. That's what show up means. Show up does not mean anything to do with public image, social media, making a name for yourself, getting famous, or anything like that. Showing up is literally the opposite of living your life on autopilot, living your life behind a mask, pretending to be someone you're not, just kind of hosting, not really engaging with anything that's happening around you, kind of just like going through life like a robot. That's the opposite of showing up. Being your authentic self and really honoring the life that you've been given with all the opportunities and the challenges. That is showing up.
I absolutely love that, because I think the title is very powerful and it's something that will stay in minds. And it's the absolute reason why I would pick up a book with that title, not just because I'm reviewing it for the show, but because it does very gently say, this is something you need to do. Otherwise, you're going to just miss out on your whole life. Your whole life will pass you by.
Exactly.
So you speak about not living your life on autopilot. What that brings to mind for me is trauma. And as a trauma response, this idea of dissociation, this idea of just sleepwalking through your life. You use the word sleepwalking in the manuscript. This idea of just going through life on autopilot, as you say, just because it has to be done. But there is this feeling of there's got to be more to life. Where do young couples, young people starting out in enterprise, older people who just feel they've given their life to bringing up kids and home and whatever, where do they start to break beyond that autopilot, to break beyond that haze of dissociation? What would your recommendations be?
Well, I think the first starting point, firstly, and that's why the first part of the book really is, as you say, that admonition, where I'm really kind of being very frank with my reader to say, look, this is your life, babe. You know, if you don't live it, it's not going to get lived. Bottom line, if you don't live your life fully, it will not get lived. So all the potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in you, all these opportunities that he gives you for khair, for development, for growth, for expansion, you will waste all of them and they will go basically down the drain, right? If you're fine with that, then close the book and go along your merry way. It's fine. But if some part of you feels uncomfortable with that, some part of you cannot make peace with the idea of wasting your life, wishing your life away. I talk about that as well. You know, that stage where, you know, the stage you're in right now is never good enough. You never have enough love, you never have enough happiness, you never have enough good memories or anything. You're always thinking, you know, when this happens, I'll be happy when, like they say, you know, oh, when I get married, oh, when I have my baby, or when the kids go to school, oh, when the kids leave home. And you're hoping for the joy, the love, the happiness, or even just the peace. You're hoping for that at the next stage. But what's happening is that you're missing out on the blessings of the time you have right now because you don't even see it. And a lot of this is, remember I said to you, it's about paradigms. It's about frames and paradigms. Many, and the thing is, I feel like a lot of us, the reason we don't see the blessings in front of us is because we don't recognize them, because we're comparing them to someone else's blessings. So we think that motherhood should look like X, Y, Z. We look at our motherhood or our children or whatever, and they don't fit that. So therefore, in our minds, well, you know, I haven't got the great, you know, family. Marriage supposed to look a particular way because you've compared it to something, right? You look at your marriage and you think, well, that's not what I have, you know, so, you know, I haven't done, I am not good enough, I'm not good at, you know, and all of that negative self-talk, I talk about that in the book as well. All of that basically, it programs you to see yourself as a victim of life circumstances. But the good thing is, you can change that programming. It's not something that is impossible to change. You can change it, but the first thing you need to do is make the decision to change it. First, you have to realize this is what I'm doing. And that's why the first part of the book is that wake-up call to say, come on, babe, this is what you've got to work with. So what are you going to do with it? You know, are you happy to just let it, you know, kind of go to waste? Or are you going to kind of step up and woman up and say, you know, this is my life and I need to live it. I need to live it because no one else is going to live it for me. That's the first part. And then the second part is more practical steps, you know, getting clear on your intention, you know, choosing to be positive, embracing gratitude, you know, having courage, being yourself, all of these things I talk about in the book. And it's common sense, really. But you know what they say, common sense is not so common. So I feel like this stuff, these techniques that we can use to get our heads in the right place, I feel they should be taught to our children in high school. I really believe that. And all just boys, Muslim, non-Muslim, I think everyone should understand that your mental space will affect your experience of life. It's not your life that affects the way that you see things or experience things. It's your perspective on what's happening. And we see this all the time. We see people who, from the outside, they have everything. They have everything that everybody else wants. But are they happy? No. Because in their brain, they're thinking that of what they don't have, or the way that they see what they have, it makes them feel bad. Either they feel disappointed or frustrated or guilty or ashamed, whatever the case may be. But the life they have, it hasn't made them happy. And then you'll see people who go through trials and fitna and tests, and they don't have what everybody else is craving. They don't have all the things that everybody else wants. But their perspective on all of that is different to everyone else's. So they feel blessed, they feel grateful, they feel at peace, they feel secure, they have that sakina, they have that love and that happiness, not because their life situation is great, but because their perspective on their life situation allows them to experience the gratitude, the sakina, the love, and all of those things. So this here, we should be teaching it to all children, for real.
I'm glad that we're talking solutions, because while we can identify where the issues and the blocks are, you're talking solutions in the book and obviously today as well. Now, you talk also about the leap of faith. We often feel when I'm outside of fear, when I get over my fear of
Mm,
whatever, then I will achieve XYZ. So, but you say take that leap of faith, carry your
yeah,
fear with you and
yeah,
dive.
yes,
Tell us about,
yes. I love
more
it
about that concept.
because the issue of fear, I mean, this is for now because I talk about the comfort zone, don't I? And I talk about how your highest potential will never be found in your comfort zone. So, all of you who are out there waiting for a time when you feel 100% sure, 100% certain, 100% confident of making a particular move, when you feel no fear, no trepidation, no nervousness, you are waiting for a train that is not going to come because it's not even on the schedule. Okay. Your comfort zone is the place of ease, safety, security. But your comfort zone is also a place of stagnation, right? Because you can't grow in the comfort zone. The comfort zone is not asking you to do anything different, it's asking you to do the same thing again and again. Now, if you do want to achieve your fullest potential, if you do want to go level up, if you do want to be a better version of yourself next year than you are now, then you must be clear on the fact that you're going to have to come out of your comfort zone. And that is scary. Most of the time, the things outside your comfort zone, there's a bit of risk involved. It's unfamiliar. You may feel less confident. That's basically what distinguishes the comfort zone from the stretch zone, because in the stretch zone, you're not sure what it's going to be like and you're worried about what it's going to be like and you may have some fear and trepidation. But what we say in the book is understand that if you've prayed istikhara, guys, come on, think of the istikhara prayer, right? I'm not saying this is for every single thing, but if you've prayed istikhara, think about the words of istikhara. If this thing is good for me, then bless it for me and make it easy for me and bring it to me. And if it's not good for me, then remove it from me and replace it with something better, right? So if you prayed istikhara, you may still have that fear, but the Lord of all the worlds has your back. You've asked him, like, Ya Rab, you know this thing that I want to do. If it's good, like, let's make it happen. So then you go forward with this thing and you see that, okay, it's happening. I'm doing it. And it's uncomfortable and you may have fear, but it's okay. I'm good. Like, I can handle this. And just because I have fear doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. And in fact, I know that I think it's Stephen Pressfield who says, when you feel that fear, I know lots of people actually who say that when you experience that fear, it's almost like that's a signal to say that's your next level. That fear that you feel is a signal to you to say that is your next level. And now it's a chance. Am I going to take the challenge or not? Am I going to play it safe, stay in the comfort zone, or am I going to take that risk, hoping, inshallah, that that risk is going to pay off, and whatever I get on the other side is going to be better for me, is going to be, I'm going to learn things, I'm going to be stretched, I'm going to grow, I'm going to become a better version of myself, smarter, more faithful, more patient, more courageous, more knowledgeable, wiser, whatever the thing may be, mashallah. And it applies to literally everything in life, subhanallah. You can tell I get excited about this stuff because I love to see people realizing that, wow, I could do this. This is not just for so and so and so. I can show up in my life, whether I'm a single mom, whether I'm single, whether I've got, one kid or 10 kids, or my parents are ill, or I've lost my spouse. I can do this because the thing is, everybody who's listening, I want you to remember this. This is not my words. These are the words of the Lord of all the worlds. He has made a promise to every single one of us that he will not burden us more than we can bear. And for me, that is one of it's like a mic drop moment, sorry to say, but it's like, I've got a promise from Allah. Whatever tests come my way, I can be sure and have yaqeen 100% that I can do this. Allah's going to help me. He's going to send help my way. And I have what it takes inside me to get through this test and thrive. So if you have that mindset, sis, how can you fail? How can you fail? There's no failure anyway, only feedback. I think I say that in the book as well. So much, subhanAllah, so much.
Your excitement shows through in the book as well. So how wonderful, subhanAllah, to have you verbalize your concepts, because you do say, and I think for me, the words that stuck out were, make fear your friend. Whoever thinks of fear as your friend, we're always trying to get rid of it. And
Yeah.
you're saying, You don't have to get rid of it. You can work with it.
Yes.
And I think that's a very powerful comment in that way. You also talk about, um, and I should have brought this up, but it just fits in nicely now, showing up as prophetic sunnah. And we need that reminder as well. So you make these references from the Quran as you have right now, from the Sunnah, and this idea that actualizing the self is also about improving one's spirituality and trust in Almighty. Talk to us about that, about blending the psychological and the spiritual.
I love that question, mashallah. So many good questions. I love it. The thing is that we everything we have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the thing is, we're all different. All of us have a different set of characteristics, don't we? Personality, character, flaws and strengths and weaknesses and everything is sort of a unique package. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it to you and says, okay, here you go. Like, go and do what you will with it. Yeah. Now, the whole idea of personal development and personal growth is basically making the most of your God-given gifts and talents. So for me, becoming the best version of myself is an act of ibadah. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me a gift, I want to make sure that I show gratitude for that gift by using it. I don't want to be ungrateful and ignore the gift or pretend I don't have it. Or when people compliment me about it, say, no, it's not like that, and kind of dismiss it. I'm not going to do that. And people think that that's from piety and from humility. I don't agree with that at all, because the reality is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored some of us over others in different areas. Now, if those people who have been favored in a particular area then deny the favor, what is that? That's not piety. It's not humility. So I also talk about that in the book, if you remember, sort of this whole idea of kind of confidence. Is it okay to be confident as a Muslim? Doesn't that kind of not fit well with being humble, etc.? So I hope that I made a good argument in the book for that, because what I've seen with sisters when I'm working with them is that one of the biggest challenges that sisters have is lack of confidence. That they don't have a high self-esteem, they don't have a high sense of self-worth, and they themselves are blind to their own gifts and talents. And most of the time, they're blind to how they are already showing up in life. And because they're blind to it, they don't appreciate themselves. And when you don't appreciate yourself, you don't look after yourself, you don't respect yourself, you don't cherish yourself, you don't even love yourself enough to give yourself what you need. So that's another thing that I talk about in the book is, this idea of loving yourself as a slave of Allah, as a creation of Allah, and us not having been taught that, never having had that conversation. I'm sure our mothers would never have such a conversation with us. But, this is the thing, that if you've been given a certain set of gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's put you in a particular situation where you have the choice to either use those gifts or deny them, then I think there's no one in the world who will say that the Islamic position, the correct Islamic position, is that you should deny those gifts and carry on as normal as if you don't have them. That I'm challenging anybody to bring me a proof to say that. So if you look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will see that his whole journey was a journey of being tested and challenged to level up, to take the next leap of faith, to take the next step, to do the next big thing, to do the next really scary thing. And Allah knew that he could handle it. And he sent him people around that would help him, that would support him, that would be able to shield him as he went on this journey. And that's the Prophet of God. But every single one of you is on the same journey. Every single one of you is on the same journey, because that's what I say, is that your life is like a novel. It's like a story by itself, and you are the protagonist. You're the main character. And exactly like the Prophet ﷺ was, kind of put in situations that tested him, that were difficult for him, that were daunting, and was kind of, given the opportunity, okay, are you going to rise to the challenge or not? Every one of us has been in that situation, every single one of us. And we will continue to be put in that situation until we go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my thing is, if I think like the hero of my story, if I think as if I was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if I was one of the Sahaba, if I was one of the prophets, if I was one of the people from the past who was put through challenging situations and rose, and that's why we remember their names. That's why. You remember the story I tell about the two women? If you've read the book, anybody who's read the book, I tell the story about two women, don't I? I won't tell the story now. But inshallah, when you read the book, look out for the story I tell of the two women and the two versions of the story. And the thing is that the reality is every one of us could tell a sob story about our life right now. If we focus enough, we will be able to find all the mistakes and the bad things in our lives and the terrible things that have happened to us and the times that we did the wrong thing or that we weren't the best version or that, whatever the case may be. We've all got that because we're humans. But equally, the other version of the story is available, and it's also true, because I will challenge anyone, anytime, any minute, to not tell me a hero's version of their life story when they did do the right thing, when they did make the right choice, when things were really difficult but they stayed constant, and where they stood up for others, and then they were a good friend and a good sister and a good daughter, and they did their duty and they learned the thing that was hard and they overcame the obstacles. We've all been there. It's just that we don't focus on that side so much, and that's why we think of ourselves as victims, and we kind of like sit in this victimhood. And I'm just like, I'm here to say, snap out of that. There's no barakah in that at all. Rather, you have an opportunity here to live your life like a masterpiece. So do it. Rant over.
It's also important, and I want to appreciate that you've written this book. It's important that there are support structures, there are support systems available, whether it's in the form of this book or workshops, that can help sisters to catapult beyond the desperation of their time, the difficulties of the time, the tests of their time. And so thank you for that as well, for writing this and for making it so accessible to people. Sister Naima, we talk of keeping a positive mindset, engaging a positive mindset. But there's also this concept of toxic positivity, not to throw a spanner in the works, but rather to extend the conversation to say, um, mental health is such a thing that there are often, very difficult situations to navigate, not just the situation, but the chemistry that we deal with as well. And
Yeah.
yes, Quran and offers healing. Support structures offer healing. But our sisters, when you talk about having a crisis of confidence, also deal with trauma that is systematic and systemic.
Mm-hmm.
So moving beyond that, what would your advice be?
I would
What I'm
say,
basically saying is, even if we look at the Sunnah, we've got examples of women, who've had, who've been in battle, Muslim women are not sort of the oppressed sitting in a dark corner. Muslim women have accomplished in every form of life from 1600 years ago, from now. What I'm questioning is why the crisis of confidence now? It's something that we need to address.
Mm-mm. Well, I think firstly, I would say that the fact that Muslim women have achieved in the past, I don't think that really has any bearing on how people feel about themselves. Because if you see yourself as a failure in whatever way, it doesn't matter to you that there are some Muslim women who are doing great, or there have always been, because you don't feel great because of what you're doing in your life. So that's the first thing that I want to say. Second thing is that, for sure, we know now, I think, as Muslims, that there are certain mental health challenges that are chemical, that there are real psychological issues that people have. And so my book really is not the best book to give to somebody who's been through trauma, for example, and who hasn't healed, who hasn't done the work. Alhamdulillah, like, I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but in the UK, we as Muslims have come to terms with the fact that there is chemical induced depression and anxiety and a host of other mental illnesses, and are taking steps to deal with that. So whether you need counseling or you need therapy or you need psychological evaluation, I think the only thing I would say that Show Up will offer to that is this idea of honoring your mental state. Because if you know that you've been through trauma, or you've been through some kind of abuse, or you have some unhealed wounds from your past, you need to deal with them, sis. Like, that's what you need to do. You need to love yourself enough and value your mental health and your emotional well-being enough to get the help that you need. Yeah, I would never ever tell somebody who's been through any of those to say, oh, suck it up, Allah doesn't burden a soul more than it can bear, da 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 da. That for me is it's dismissive. At the end of the day, trauma, that word, it's a very interesting word, because I think we can probably say that for many of us older people and then our previous generations, they went through some traumatic times and probably experienced what we would now call today trauma. But because they did not have the language or the understanding, they do not consider themselves traumatized. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, sis. Okay, they don't even recognize that as trauma. They don't recognize the trauma or a trauma response. So I think those times are gone. I think we now know a lot more about trauma and trauma responses and trauma bonding and all of this kind of thing. So I would just say that the biggest part, I would say, the first thing I say in the book is to show up for yourself. And I talk about it. I talk spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, in terms of your family and or physically and everything. Showing up for yourself is shukr. This is you acknowledging that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with all these faculties and no one else is responsible for looking after them except you. So you need to do yourself the favor, showing up for yourself first. I'm not here saying to everybody, go show up for the whole world and you neglect yourself. The first person you need to show up for is yourself. And looking after every aspect of you means that you are in touch with your emotions. You're in touch with your mental state. You're in touch with your iman. And if you see that there are issues there, Bismillah, take the means to solve them. Take the means to get the healing that you need. That, you know, again, this whole thing of, you know, not being taught to love ourselves, etc. I think part of that was you're always putting yourself last, right? Many of our cultures are kind of built on the idea that a woman's role is to serve everybody else, whether it's her children, her husband, her community, her extended family, whatever. Her role and her value is in the service that she offers other people. And at the risk of alienating my South African audience, I would say that we need to examine that, because that is doesn't it's times have changed. Let's put it that way. I think times have changed. And I think that we are understanding now the cost of putting everybody else first and living your life as an act of service to other people, and never pouring into yourself and never filling your own cup and never honoring your own needs. I don't really think that we are going to be able to fly with that anymore. Certainly from the millennials onwards, it's not going to fly. And I don't think that it was healthy anyway. It's just what was necessary at the time. Now I feel we need to be creating communities and families where there is a balance. Mum is not the only one who serves and gives and is constantly pouring into other people. That's not the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it has to be. Yes, we serve our families. Yes, we obey our husbands. Yes, we are the good Muslim woman, but I'm a Muslim woman first. I'm a Muslim first. I'm a human being first. And I will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a human being, and I'll have to answer. And the reality is, none of us can be the doting mother, the doting wife, the dutiful daughter-in-law. We can't truly, authentically be any of those unless we are whole and safe and sane ourselves. So this here, that's an amana. And I said it here, guys, this here, your intellect, your emotion, your mental, your physical, your spiritual, is amana. And inshallah, you show up for yourself, you will eventually show up so much better for the people around you. You serve others more from a full cup than an empty one.
Jazakallah khair. I think that was such a beautiful roundup of your message, because I enjoyed particularly your prompts along the way of self-acceptance, engaging courage and gratitude and building. I really see this as, even if someone were to go for extensive therapy, to take this as a side document, as a reminder to engage empathy for the self first, agency, you know, to reawaken one's agency, or to be more aware of one's own abilities. And I think in that way, it really is a positive and a very motivational text. And to take your words, to bloom where you planted, I really loved how you conceptualized that, because the idea that you really, you know, we really can be the best that we can be just by replenishing the self. Sister Naima, Jazakallah khair for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed the interview, but I especially enjoyed reading Show Up. And I hope that many people that are going to be reading this will have more commentary for us, and
Inshallah.
can refer back on how this has impacted on their life and on their youth.
Please tell everybody at Exclusive Books, go to your local Exclusive Books and say, we want that book by Naima B. Robert. Go and order it. Then we can get it into South Africa, inshallah.
Inshallah. And I noticed that you're already on #1 on the Amazon is it .com co.uk list. So that's a good thing. People are downloading and reading from there as well. And I hope that more South Africans pick up physical copies, as you said, from Exclusive Books. I read the ebook particularly. So I'm definitely going to go and get a copy for my shelf, because as much as I love technology, I want to have the original in my hand as well, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair for your time. It was an absolute pleasure. May Allah grant you barakah.
Ameen wa iyaki.
And so there you have it, Sister Naima Robert with her latest book, Show Up, a motivational message for Muslim women. Deeply accessible reading, something that you should pick up, and definitely something you should have on your bookcase for young and old to read and to reflect on. And this is it for this week's show of Book Bites on Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.